Okay. If the legs are congruent, then the angles are congruent. So if we look at this diagram and I know that this leg is congruent to this leg, then I can draw arrows across that says angle 2 and angle 3 are also congruent. Okay? So, and the converse just says if the angles are congruent, then the sides are congruent. We're going to do some practice with that where you can look across from the angles and the legs. And we'll look at that down there at the bottom on practice number 1. Okay, so let's scroll down a little bit. And by scroll down a little bit, I mean move down on your paper. Okay, number 1 says find the measure of angle J and find the measure of angle K. So if we are going to find the measure of angle J and finding the measure of angle K, anybody have any ideas of how we can find measure of angle J? Shelley? Okay, so Shelley is looking and noticing that these two sides are the same, which means the angles across from them are also the same. So let's go ahead and mark with the arcs J and L, because that means that they're the same. So if L is 68, then that means that J is also 68. So if we know that these two angles are 68, how could we find angle K? Anybody know? John.
The three angles of a triangle all have to equal up to 180.
Okay, so what's your equation going to look like?
68 plus 68 plus x equals 180.
Perfect. 68 plus 68 plus x, or measure of angle K, whichever you'd like, has to equal 180. Perfect. You have the answer? Okay, hang on just a second. I'll let you save it for your class. It's just a second. Okay, Caitlin, what'd you get? 40? 44. Anybody else get 44? Good. Okay, let's look at problem number 2. Okay, I know that these two sides are congruent, so I'm going to, if you need to draw arrows across, that's going to be talking about this angle right here, and then this angle right here. So angle C and angle E have to be the same.
Do we have to draw the angles?
You do not need to draw the arrows, but you do need to draw the angles congruent. Yes. You don't have to draw the arrows, but you need to draw your angles congruent. Now, we know that D is 106, so does that mean that C is also 106? No. Okay? James, help us out.
Okay. What you do is 180 minus 106, and then take that answer, divide it by 2.
Okay, so let's go, you're correct, but let's go the opposite way of setting up the equation. Do we know how much C is? No, so let's call it what? X. If C is X, how much is E? X. And now we have two angles represented by X, which is fine. So now I have X plus 106 equals 180, which James is going to get the same answer, but it's showing us the work to get there, right? And I am a lot focused on the work to get there, okay, because I want you to make sure you understand what you're doing. So, yes, you were exactly correct, but this is showing the algebra of how to get there, okay? What's that, 74? So X is 37. And X was representing angle C and angle E, so they're both 37. Good. Okay, let's look at number 4. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Number 3 talks about the sides. Let's check out number 3. Number 3 says, find the measure of YZ. Well, don't we see that these two angles are congruent? So let's mark them congruent. If those two angles are congruent, that means the sides across from them are congruent. So if XY is 12, how much is YZ? 12. Because the sides across from the angles are also congruent. And then we could figure out angle y, which is what we've been doing all along. Okay. All right, on number 4, it tells me that these sides are congruent. If these sides are congruent, what do I know about those angles, Donald? In number 4. If I know that those two sides are congruent, what do I know about 5x plus 9 and 8x minus 30? They're the same, right? So how am I going to find x? Did you hear that? Set them equal. Does it make sense to you why we're going to set them equal? Because you just told me they're the same, right? And if they're the same, then that means that they are equal. Okay? So we're going to set them equal. 5x plus 9 equals 8x minus 30. If you added them together and set them equal to 180, that would be incorrect because two angles in a triangle do not make 180. All three of them do. Okay, and so if we solve this for x, that gives me 3x equals 39. I'm getting x to be 13. Good. Okay, number 5 is done the same way. Let's look at angle 6. I'm sorry, number 6.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
So I would set these two equal to each other because I don't have an angle up here.
You would set them equal to each other because these sides are marked congruent. And if the
And
sides
the
are the
same.
congruent, then the angles are the same. Yes.
So
Yep. I'm sorry, what'd you say, Ashley? Yep, because the directions said to find the value of each variable. Yeah. So number 6, you're just going to find out, you know that the angles are congruent, which means what about the sides there on number 6? The sides are congruent. So let's go ahead and mark them congruent, because remember you get points for marking your diagrams. So it doesn't matter about the angles. All I know is that the angles are congruent, so the sides across from them are congruent. So I'm going to mark them with the hash marks. And then I have 15x plus 7 equals 23x minus 17. Okay, take a minute and solve that for x. Lexi, let me know what you get for x. What'd you get for x? It's okay. It's okay to be wrong. Okay, so did you subtract 15x over? Okay, if we move 15x over, it's going to give us 8x minus 17 plus 7, then we'll add 17 over. Oh, yeah, that will be a problem. I'm getting x to be 3. Okay, x is 3. All right, let's go on to number 8. So then that means you made another mistake where you didn't have a negative. You should have had a negative x somewhere. Did you subtract 23 over?
I subtracted 15 over.
Okay. I'll look at it in just a minute, okay? All right, let's look at number 8. Draw a picture, please. Label your diagram as I'm catching up with you.
Number 8.
Yep, number 8. All right. You should have it labeled. It says RT is congruent to ST. Did you mark that in your diagram? Okay, with the hash marks, that RT and ST are congruent. So if RT and ST are congruent, which two angles have to be congruent? Angle R and what? Even if your diagram is flipped around, you should still get the same answer as me. Angle R and angle S, right? Because if you look at these two sides are congruent and you draw arrows across from them, that means R and S are the same. So if R and S are the same, that means I'm going to set them equal to each other. So I have 9x plus 2 has to equal 13x minus 18. Because I know that those two angles are congruent to each other. So if we subtract, we get 4x minus 18 equals 2. 4x equals 20. And x is 5. If I know that x is 5, can I figure out RS and T? Could you guys do that? Figure out how much angle RS and T are? What are you going to do? Plug them in, right? Do we need to take time to plug them in right now? No. Any questions on number 8? All right, let's look down there where it says equilateral triangles. This is the last thing before we're done today. A triangle is equilateral if and only if it is equiangular. All right, so what do you think equilateral means? Because we haven't had that yet. What do you think equilateral means? All sides are the same. So next to equilateral triangles, I would say all three sides are congruent. Next to that word equilateral triangles, I would write all three sides are congruent. Next to equilateral triangles. I'm getting there. Yep, that's going to be a vocab word. All three sides are congruent. What about equiangular, do you think? John? All three angles are the same. Okay, there's another vocab word. Equiangular. All three angles are the same, or are congruent. If all three angles in a triangle are congruent, how much is each angle?
60.
How did you find out that they were 60? 180 divided by 3, right? Because if they're all the same and we get 180 together, then it's 60, 60, 60. So you might want to make yourself a note that it's 60 degrees, 60, 60, and 60, if it's equiangular. Okay? So if we look at example 11, it says angle A is 60, angle B is 60. How much is angle C then? 60, right? And you could do 60 plus 60 is 120. Subtract that from 180 and you get 60. Okay, so angle C is going to be 60. Because if two of them are 60, then the third one has to be. And then if AB is 9, how much are each of the sides? 9. And the reason we know that each of the sides are 9, guys, is because it's equiangular. And if it's equiangular, it's also equilateral, which means each of these sides are 9. All right. Number 12. They are telling us that it's equilateral, right? That's what these hash marks mean. So this is 24. This is 24. If it's equilateral, if all the sides are the same, what do we know about all the angles? They're all the same. So how much is each angle here?
60.
There we go. 60, 60, 60. All right, number 13 says, if triangle PQR is an equilateral triangle, solve for x and y. All right, so if we look at this, if it's equilateral, what does that mean about all the sides? Okay, so put hash marks around all three sides. All three sides should have one hash mark there. Yeah, that's the symbol that means, oh my gosh. Okay, if all three of them are the same, doesn't matter which two that you choose to set equal to each other. No. All right, so go ahead and do that. It doesn't matter to me which two sides you choose to be equal. You're probably going to choose different than your neighbor, and that's okay. So choose any two sides in number 13 and set them equal to each other, because if they're all the same, then it doesn't matter which two sides you set equal to each other. We should get the same value for x. I'm getting y to be 12. What about you guys? Okay? So we know that y is 12. Now it's asking us to find out how much x is. And if you look here, x is representing one angle down here. Well, we know if it's equilateral, then it's equiangular, right? Which means all three of these angles are the same. So how much is one angle? 60, right? One angle is 60. So how could we figure out how much x is? Who's talking? Talk louder, Katie. 7x minus 3 equals 60. James?
You could also do it another way.
What could you do?
7x minus 3 equals 7x minus 3.
Okay, what happens when you do that? If you do 7x minus 3 equals 7x plus minus 3, do that on your paper real quick. See what happens. Do you have an answer for x? Yeah. So remember, the property says if the triangle is equiangular, if all three angles are the same, then they're all three going to be 60 always. It's 60, 60, 60. Natasha, you get an answer for x? X is 9. James, what happened when you set them equal to each other?
You just get 0.
Right. Because that's not an
It's a
expression.
different
Yeah.
problem I'm thinking of.
Yeah. Okay, so if we know that, hang on just a second. If we know that each angle is 60, then we're going to set 7x minus 3 equal to 60. We get x to be 9. We okay with that? All right. So then homework number 11 goes with this, but we won't do that until tomorrow.